So I think we actually can start now. I was just testing audio, sorry for that. But you should be able to hear me. Let me know maybe if you're watching on Facebook, or you actually can only watch this stream in our Facebook group. So maybe leave me a comment if the audio is decent, if you can understand everything properly, and then we will go into the live critique. Let me just switch over to my Facebook so I actually can see what we are doing. So again, if you're watching, just leave me a comment so I know we can get started, or if I have to adjust something in my settings. Now, before we jump into this, let me explain what we are doing. So to everyone who has not seen one of the previous critiques, we have a website allowing people to upload their images and receive critiques. So that's completely for free. And if you are a member of the group, obviously you will find the link to boutiqueretouching.com. There, maybe I can even show this. Give me a second. Let's open up a browser. And switch over. So if you are going to our website, obviously you can go to learn and then maybe go to learn. And then you have the menu here where you can submit for critique. Sorry, I have to drink something. And there, obviously, here is our submit page. Here are the rules. Everyone is allowed to submit one image. We will do a critique whenever we have the chance to do these, and you can also use one of our free raw files if you don't have any images. And then obviously you have to fill out your name. If you have a website, it would be nice to include that, and an email address. And then you have to obviously submit the image, agree that we can contact you via email, and that's pretty much all you have to do. So if you don't have any images, we have this other side you get there from, again, on our website. Go to learn and then free raw files. We have a bunch of free raw files that you can use for free, for practice, for portfolio building. And there were some photographers that provided these, and this is actually quite awesome of them to provide images for free. And again, everything you have to do is fill out the form, subscribe to our newsletter, and then you get access to all the files that we have. So you don't you don't subscribe every time or something. You just subscribe once, and the first follow-up email will be a link with access to all the files. So let's transition back and let me just quickly check. Yeah, maybe we just go over the critique now. So I don't have a guest today, and let's jump right into the first image. So well, I'm not pre-selecting images that are maybe bad. So we will give critique no matter what, because there are people begin on the far end of the beginner level, and then there are people that are more advanced and might have the and everyone should get the opportunity to receive feedback. So let's start with the first image. The first image is by Bamisate T. Victor. So let's talk about what we can do here, or let's talk about what I think should be talked about in this image. And the first thing that I notice is we have like a purple going on in this image. Probably someone brushed over this with a very large brush. And yeah, it doesn't match everything else. So it kind of ends here. And then we go into yellow tone, and here we go into a magenta. Sorry. I can't write. Magenta, and here yellow. And that is not necessarily something you would like to do, especially for consider it maybe a portrait or something. And let's quickly go over what we could do to improve this, or what a mistake could have been made. So in terms of changing color of the image, changing the white balance, there are obviously multiple tools. For example, we could go into hue saturation and play around with this and make it more of a natural tone instead of a reddish tone. That would be an option. We could then, to fix this, maybe select a range of these magenta tones. So you can see, if I desaturate these tones, that we have all these magenta tones in here, but not in the rest of the skin. So that's something we could then shift towards something more similar to the rest. Obviously increase the saturation. And then what also is noticeable, that everything has a color cast. So we would have to brighten some tones and desaturate them, and then we basically don't have much variation within the skin. Another way how you could go over this is, for example, if you go to curves and then go to the mid slider and click on the image. Maybe let's decide for something like this, and then the curves are going to try to neutralize what you clicked on. So obviously we don't want the yellow tones to be gray. We want something else. And then obviously we still have the issue of this being magenta and this being yellow and this being like reddish. So there's pretty much, like, once you have overlaid all the colors, there's not that much you could do. For example, let's go over the quickly go over the head layers that I have. So if we look at the saturation, we have tons of saturation over here. And if you look at the hue, then obviously we have more yellow up here and more magenta down there. It's very difficult once you have overlaid all the colors and have gotten rid of the original skin tone variations. So let's have a look at something else. So let's consider, and let's not look at the color issues that the image has, but only the retouching and the the retouching that you've done, the skin smoothing and everything. So let's look at it in a black and white conversion. So what's very prominent is that we have some let's call it, yes, in this area, for example, let me go and put this on top. So for example, this area here has very, except for maybe, let's pick a brighter color so you can see. So all around the cheek down here, we have very little change in the skin texture. And that's something you kind of want to avoid, because it minimizes the appearance of the shape that we have in the face. And it also doesn't match the strong highlights we have here and on the forehead and around the nose. So the contrast, for example, if you look at the highlight here and everything that is happening in the nose, so the highlight and the shadow, and compared to the highlight on the cheek and the area underneath. So we have a completely different shadow texture. So if I zoom in, here you can see texture. Here you basically can't see, you just can see it being blurred. And something similar is going on the forehead. So you can see some texture here, but then everything else here is kind of blurred again. And also the hairline has been blurred. So we still can see these marks and lines that are going through here, because the person retouching the images might not have used dodging and burning to get rid of these small patches, but instead has blurred everything, and then we still don't get rid of the kind of fine lines and shadows. We just blur them, and they are still visible. For example, here, here. I'm just trying to go over them. Obviously, if I paint over them, you don't see them, but if I take this away and your attention is now over this area, you will definitely see them. And so that's basically the main issue that this person might have, is blurring some areas way too much, not getting rid of some distractions. Obviously, that person did a decent job of getting rid of small blemishes and everything. Didn't clean up the nails. That is something that should have been done. You could decide to get rid of maybe 1 or 2 lines up there, and then fill in some gaps in the hair and make this all look a little bit nicer and cleaner. And then again, the biggest issue has been the color issues. So for everyone else who just jumped into the video, that person overlaid a lot of colors, has gotten rid of a lot of natural color variation that was in the image, and therefore there is not much in terms of correcting this from this state. It's needed to be done in the original image. So that's pretty much all I have to say to this image, about this image. And let's just jump right into the next one. Let's not save this, and then let's look at this image. Has been submitted by Catalin Pierbulensu. It's, sorry if I pronounce names not properly, but some of them are really hard. So let's talk about this image and what I like about this image, and then let's go over some. Let's just look at it from the far. So the first impression that I have is the color toning that has been done. So the background and also the color in the shadows and in the highlights of the subject. What do I mean by that? Obviously, we have some purple reddish tone in the darks that is also present in the hair and also in the skin tone shadows around here everywhere. And then we have the I would consider it a green mint color that is obviously all over the background, but also is represented in the highlights. So that's something that has been done quite nicely. And if we sample these colors, for example, let's make a little color palette. So let's build one. So we have this very dark purple. We have this one. Let's see, what else do we got? So these tones, and then obviously we have some skin tones, and they are getting greener and greener until we also end up in this tone. So we have a gradation from the dark tones, which are more of on the red side, towards the green that is put all over the highlights. How could you, for example, do this if you wanted to apply this? So for example, you could do this with what would you use? Not a gradient. Where is it? The gradient overlay, the gradient map. So you could basically decide to go, let's go with a gradient map and choose one of these pinkish colors, go over and do this, and then we have to sample this color. I should have sampled the right color. So which color is it? This one. Let's copy this and let's go over here and put the color in there. So yeah, so this is the gradient overlay. Obviously you would tweak this in terms of which colors you want where, and you might even want one that is more of a skin color down here. So obviously we have already had an image that that has the color applied, and reapplying it doesn't do the image any favor. But for example, if I was to copy this over to another image, then you can see how you can make use of this. For example, we just maybe want to do this to hue or color, and then take it away in the very dark parts of the image. And also have it not applied like 100%. So we could play around with this, and then we could apply such a toning like very very dialed in to our liking. So that would be one of many methods that you could use to, for example, go with such a toning. Obviously, this has been done probably not in just one layer. It's much more refined. There are probably selections involved of the subject and the background separately, and having done color toning on all of these elements separately. I could be wrong, but then again, what I like is we have these highlights that are reminiscent of this background, but still we have quite some variation in the skin color. So for example, let's load up our help layers again, and let's look over this image. So let's look at the saturation. You see, we still have a lot of variance in the face, how the saturation changes. But that might also be something to still deal with. For example, let's load up another layer here, and let's choose a proper color. So for example, we have these very bright lines around here and around the nose, and some dark lines that are here. So these are like, let me choose another color for these. So this is very saturated, and then let's choose green, and these are maybe a better green. And then we have some desaturation that could be fixed. So let me switch this on and off. We are on the saturation layer. So let me switch this on and off. And let's look at this line where the purple is. There you can see we have some very high saturation. It still looks okay. It could be minimized. And then we have some low saturation around here. Okay, these are highlights. But then around here we have some grayish lines. They're not very prominent here, but they are leftovers. So if I put the help layer on again, you can see around here there's some discoloration and not enough color in there. That could be fixed. And then let's look at the hue of the image. So there you can see this is not the usual you would see with this head layer. So because of the color toning, we have a very large spread of tonality from the highlights to the shadows. And the shadows are actually, and the skin itself is relatively what you would see in normal skin, but the highlights are much, much, much greener than the natural skin tone would be. So, but that is the decision that person has made by doing the color toning. And you can see that we also have this red tone all over the shadows. And yeah, so that's pretty much what that person has done. Again, it's been done relatively nicely, I would say. I would still clean up some of the hair and some minor details. Like for example, here you can clean up the hair. You could also here in the shadows clean up the hair a little bit, and yeah. So also this area could be improved. But that's just very apparent only if you zoom in. So for example, also the line here could be improved. So this person has painted over here. I'm not a fan of this wavy line that is going on. Like, sorry, I can't paint So this is something you just don't want to see. So that could be improved. And yeah, in terms of the skin, it was it was well done. Not overdone. The toning is nice. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say about the second image. So let's go to the next one. And hopefully I can go through this not spending too much time, because I want to get to all of the images. And so let's look at this image. And this is one of the few that we have a before after. On the right side we have the before, on the left side we have the after. So my first impression is, I mean, you can definitely go with like a pinkish tone, more pinkish skin color with this, and also this light purple background. You can definitely work with that. But then let's have a closer look. Obviously, some of the skin retouching in terms of these scars and like little marks and something has been removed. But there are a few things that are very prominent that I don't like. For example, the lip line. Let's look at the lip line here, and let's look at the lip line on the other side. There's some funky color going on that's all over the place. At some areas it's way too much, and some others it's too little. Then we have some spots in terms of color around the nose and all over the place. And then let's talk texture. So on the right side, let's look at the original skin texture and how it is. Like, for example, I can zoom 100% because I don't have the original, but let's zoom in a fair bit, and you can see that the texture, she has some texture, but it's not super sharp in the original. Whereas in the edited version, we have very prominent patch of skin texture over here, and also like very fine texture down there, and also on this side and over here. And that's due to over sharpening the image. You really want to be careful with how much you sharpen. In my opinion, this is just over sharpened, and it makes some flaws more obvious than they should be. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted. And let's load our help layers, our trusty help layers again, because you will see some of the issues in the black and white version of this image. So for example, let's look at the shadows, and let's focus on the image of the left. I'm zooming in a bit so you can see it properly in the stream. You still can see a few patches down there. So obviously the scar and everything has been removed, but looking at this image and this area, for example, you can see there's a lot of fine lines that are still left over there from not properly dodging and burning. So that could be improved. And also if I brighten up the image a bit more, you will see the same in the shadow area, like here and here. That's something, yeah, it's easily overlooked, and you have to clean up the neck as well, and not just the face, and also the shadow areas around the eye. There's still a scar left, so if you are removing scars and hairs, you should remove them all. not all, but make it look similar in some sort of way. And if I darken down the image, there will be here on the left side, you will start to see some inconsistencies down here. For example, if I take the luminosity down more, you will see that there are some inconsistencies here. And if I darken down even more, we have also some patches that could be improved in the highlights. But it's yeah, that is relatively okay done. I would definitely clean up the hair here. So from the before and after, you can see there were some hairs down here that have been removed, but if we look closely, they're not removed completely, so we still have some hairs going down there. We see some leftovers here, and that's a trick you should learn, is to brighten and darken your image, because you will see issues much more easily. For example, in the highlights, we can darken down the image even more, and then we can have a look at the at how the nose and the forehead are looking like. And we could then use this preview to nudge and burn underneath and clean this up. And yeah, so we can see what a person has done. Again, you see the scar has partially been removed, but we still have a light shadow down there, like in this area where the scar was. And that's just a leftover from where the healing and clone tool didn't work properly. And that's why we, after healing, cloning, or we go in and dodge and burn these patches away. And it's much easier to do this when you darken down the image, because if I switch this off, it's very similar in tonality, and you kind of, like, your eyes, if you're not trained, you get confused over, oh, what is brighter, and then the color is changing, so we perceive some colors as more bright and others as more dark. And using a black and white help layer is helping tremendously by your dodging and burn work. So maybe if you're watching, again, leave me a comment. If you have questions, obviously you can ask. If you the sound shouldn't be right, because I can't monitor myself at the same time as I'm recording and speaking. So let's look at this image. There's pretty much not nothing to say in terms of what I didn't say in the first image. So we have very little skin color variance. We have a lot of skin blurring going on. That's very obvious here, and this shimmer all over the place. And this person didn't really care about cleaning up details, and did just apply a color all over the image. For me, it's not that much to say, because you definitely should not make an image all the same color, so you should try to keep it. I mean, it's hard to say, because some of them are really beginner level and everyone has to practice certain techniques, but you still should aim for a very natural look. So no matter if you are trying to use a technique how to color something or not, try to stay true to natural tones. That's something I could just recommend doing. And unfortunately, there's not much more to say for me for this image. So let's go to the next image. This is by George Murray, I guess. I hope I pronounced this well. So here also, if we zoom in, that's something like what people like to do is zoom in and then you see all the skin texture that is still there. And then people say, hey, I retouch well because the skin texture is still there. But let's do the following. Let's again take our help layers and look at the skin in black and white. And let's brighten it up a bit. And then let's look at the face again. So let's zoom in, and then obviously all our texture is all good in there and stuff. But at this zoom level, you are missing out on a lot of, we call them frequencies. So there's a range of, let's consider your small texture here is a few pixels wide. That's a high frequency because there's very drastic change from a narrow band of pixels. So let's, for example, say we are zooming in and there's a white line next to a dark line, and there's just a few pixels where the contrast changes from very bright to very dark. So that's high frequency, and the more we zoom out, the more apparent gets low frequency. And if we zoom out even further, then we see some issues here, because if you're applying something like frequency separation or digital skin powder or something, it's all, you are blurring a certain amount of frequencies. And again, if we are zooming in here, we can still make out these little dots all over the skin. But if we zoom out like this, we see like shadows that are mushed together. And that is, yeah, where you actually want to go in and properly retouch these, because let's even darken this down, because it's here around this, around the shoulder where it's very prominent. Let's mark this up for you guys so you can follow. So let's grab another layer and let's take our brush. So again, we have these, yeah, these patches all over here that are just blended together. It's just, yeah, I can't tell it much better. And if we look at the face, for example, on the forehead, we have this very dark patch over here next to a bright patch, and then we have some little dark patches over there. So let me take this away. And I think being zoomed out this far, it's easy to spot and easy to recognize. And also in the face and down here, we have the same. So for example, if we brighten up the image again slightly, then we can see all these inconsistencies here in the skin, and they are still there because we did not touch them. So that person, if that person just applied, yeah, frequency separation or inverted high pass filter, it just erases a certain or blurs a certain frequency band, and all the other, let's call them issues within the skin, they are still untouched. And basically all we do is blend them together and not get rid of them. So, and the effect is that if we zoom in, we think, oh, we have blended together some tones and we saw some things that were maybe prominent here before, like some little dots here, and they vanished on this zoom level. But zooming out, we still getting the broader image of still having some issues there. And that's something you would definitely fix with dodging and burning. So for example, if we were to work on this area, right, I would just pick a levels adjustment, sorry, a curves adjustment layer. That's what you would do. Then you would invert it and go in with a brush, make it nice and small. And with the small opacity, obviously we paint white. You could then go in and paint these issues and lines away. I'm obviously not going to do this for the sake of time and demonstration here. I'm not going to do this perfectly, but that's something you could go in, do some broader strokes, and then go zoom even in further and get rid of the small leftovers and these small lines down here. And then you would try to be zoomed out as much as possible. And so that's not, I mean, I'm not definitely spending a lot of time here, but I just want to demonstrate what you could do in just a few seconds. So let's switch this on and off and just look at the cheek here where we have changed this and even this out. So without spending too much time, we could even do this like a little bit better. And especially on top here. Okay, so that's pretty much what you would do is you would go in, dodge and burn. Also the eye bag, that's something you could easily dodge away. I'm just lightly going over this. And you blend it into the neighboring areas. So let's switch this on and off, and you can see you can make a drastic impact in a very short amount of time if you were to spend some time dodging and burning. And that's just like one area. Obviously, there are more areas like around here that I would dodge and just make this blend more easily. And then there's something else I want to talk about is color. And I have these help layers here helping me, obviously not only having these to look at black and white, but also saturation. And there's some issues. So in this representation, the bright parts are colors that are more saturated, and the dark parts are colors that are more desaturated or have less saturation. And if we look at this, we have, for example, the eye bags that I just dodged away, maybe in 100%. Like here, for example, we have this triangle that is very dark compared to the rest, and I already brightened this. So the issue is not only the brightness, but also the color. So if you look at this again, you might notice that the area around here is quite gray, and we can fix this. So for example, if we switch this on again and I use an empty layer and set this to color, and then I will sample, obviously I have to deactivate, I will sample the color that is next to this area. And then let's switch this on. And this color that I'm painting on is underneath our help layer. And I will put the opacity to 20%, and then I can go over this and then switch to 10%. And that's how we can introduce color again to this area. And if I switch this off, so this is what we've done. This is with the fix and this is without it. So you can clearly see that it is much darker and a little bit gray down there. And if I put it on, it gets more of the correct color. And that's something you have to do and consider all the time, that your issues are not only bright and dark and some spots to clean up in the skin, but also the color. And if we look at the image again, there are more areas of where we could do this. For example, down here, the other side of the eye. Where else? Yeah, I think that's the most prominent that we would like to fix. And then sometimes there are issues with oversaturation. So if you look at the forehead, we have some areas that are kind of like dark spots in between. So we can even them out, for example. Let's switch them off and let's sample a color up here, which is different than the one we had before. And if we then paint over this area, we can make the forehead and this line around there look more similar, right, in terms of color. Sorry, that's the wrong. So let's switch this on and off. It's very, very minute. What if you look closely, I'm not sure if it translates well to the stream, but if you look at this area here, if I switch it on and switch it off, you should see some change. And the next thing, aside from the saturation, is the hue, which are the different tones. And I have another help layer that is showing skin color. So the brighter purple is more yellowish skin tones and the darker purple are red skin tones. For example, I can already tell that this image is too magenta. So what we would do to fix this is grab a hue saturation, and then we would pick this, desaturate, so we know where we're at. We see what we affect. And then obviously we're gonna go a little bit more into the purple. Go to 100% again of the saturation, and then we go right to the right where we have not so much magenta, obviously, and we want to just nudge it a little bit to like 2 or 3. And we can also do this right here. You can see how it's changing, right? And what you will notice is that the shoulder is much more yellow than the skin, right? So it doesn't matter if I have this activated or not, because we're switching all the colors simultaneously. But you can see that the area here has much less reds than the face has. And let's go for like 7. And then we are pretty much good in the face. And then what we could do to fix this is to grab another hue saturation, and then we go the opposite direction. So we go more magenta, right? But we just go for like -4, for example. So then we will do is to make the mask black, so it doesn't affect anything. And then we will use our preview here and paint white over the shoulder. So let me show you what happens then. If I now paint over the shoulder, we can introduce more magentas to all of the shoulder and make it the face and the make the face and the shoulder much more even in skin tone. So this is without the fix, where we have very bright. I can also show you in this view, and this is with the fix. It's very, very small, but ultimately coming from this to this, we are getting there. And then we can also have a look at the cheeks, because there are some, I would say, inconsistencies, and we can introduce much more red down here, right? And that's something you can do, is also if you have some very bright patches over here, you can just even out the skin tones by shifting tones towards magenta and towards more yellow. So that's show you before and after. So that's without all the colors that we did, and that's with all the color that we did. Right? And then we did some dodging and burning, did clean up these eye bags, for example, and it already looks like getting rid of these small things makes it look a little bit fresher. So let's go to the next image. So if you have questions, again, just post a comment or something. So let's go to the next image. Sorry, I have to drink something in between. So let's go to the next image. There are some things that are very obvious already to me. For example, we have this area that is completely dark. I should maybe pick a brighter color. So this area is completely dark and this area is completely dark. And what's very obvious are these very fine stray hairs that disturb my view somehow. So I would get rid of some of them. And yeah, that's definitely something, if they're not in line with how the hair is falling, for example, these this direction, and down here there are just these two, I would just get rid of them, right? And if we have a hair crossing this something this direction, you would definitely get rid of it. So that's something I would do with this image. What else can I see? That's Jpeg Artifacts. So I think that person did a relatively decent job with the healing and cloning and everything. I can't really judge it because the resolution is that low, but the image from the beginning was quite decent. But like if you have looked at what we talked in the image before, we still have like these areas of very low saturation around the eyes, the eye bags here. That's something that person can also think about changing. I will again use my trusty help layers here to demonstrate this to you. So let's, for example, look at, oh, there's some smudgy going on. Maybe that's JPEG compression, I'm not sure. So there's some smudging going on up there. I'm not sure if that is JPEG compression or just messy heating and cloning. I can't tell. And yeah, I want to tell you or show you some issues with the color. Again, you would, oh, that's very low resolution. We have these dark spots down here that are low saturation. That's pretty much here and here. And that should be fixed also around the lips. We have some color that is going over the lip line. That should be fixed. For example, if we were just to take an empty layer and put this in color mode. So let me close all of these because I don't have to show you. So let's use this layer and put it to color mode. And then we would take a brush, use the color right next to the lip line, and then we could paint over this. Obviously there's still some darkness going on, but that's how you could quickly fix color that is going over the lip line. And you would again stamp everywhere because the skin color is changing, things are getting darker and brighter, and you would again change your color all the time. Pick up again, paint a little bit, pick up again, and paint. And that's how you could at least get rid of the red around the lip line. And yeah, so that's what I would do. And some dodging and burning around the lips wouldn't harm. Yeah, I mean, it's just like putting a little bit more effort in here, working more on the details, not just healing and cloning. So yeah, let's go to the next image because otherwise we won't get to the 10 images that I have looked up. So this image might be a little bit difficult for many people because we have very shiny skin over here, very moist skin, also a very bright image, and a very high contrast. So we have areas that are very bright and very contrasty, and the other side of the face is very dark. That's very hard for many people to retouch. Also, it's very hard for people to recognize what to fix when things get too bright or too dark. And that's again something where the help layers come into play and can help you. For example, we can go into a black and white view and take down the luminosity drastically. And then we see what's going on in the face. And if you were to look at this versus this, you can hardly make out any differences in the skin in this view. And that's how bright the image usually is, or in this case, how the colors, how bright they are. And yeah, if we darken it down, then obviously all these things become visible, and then we would take our curves, put them underneath our help layers, brighten them up a little bit, inverse them, and then so we can use these help layers to increase the contrast, to make the flaws more visible to us, so that we can dodge and burn properly. and all these little details now become prominent, and we can go in, maybe not with 100%, but with 10%, and can work on these. So I can now dodge and burn all these little lines and patches away. For example, here and down here. And up there. And obviously you have to change the image so that you can properly dodge and burn. So I'm rotating, usually I'm rotating my image all the time, changing the brush size. That's something I'm constantly doing, and depends on where I'm working currently. So if I have to zoom in, I zoom in a little bit, but I still try to be as far zoomed out as I need to be. So obviously that makes it hard for you now to see my cursor and everything, but the smaller, the more zoomed out you are, the more you see of the overall skin texture and how it transitions into the shape, basically. So let's work on different areas so we can focus our eyes onto different spots again and again, and that helps us to not overdo it in one area. So it really helps to jump around in certain spots and fix different things here and there. And yeah. So yeah, it's also hard for me to talk while I actually do this. So let's zoom out a little bit more, rotate this, see what we have to do with our brush. And let's show you the before and the after. So this is the mask that I just painted. It's very rough, basically. I just went over it very finely or quickly. And again, you can spend as much or as little time as you want to. Ultimately, the goal is that you make the image look better. And let's switch this on and off. And that's how I would clean up the image. And also let's maybe do some more broad strokes when we have it a little bit lighter. And it's too light. Sorry for not talking because like I'm actually doing the work. Okay, so let's just do just the highlight areas and show you a before after without this. So let's maybe get to a zoom level that is appropriate. So maybe like this. And I've just taken care of cleaning up these the right side of the face, basically, where it was very bright. And this is what we've been doing. We've been cleaning up all these areas around the nose, right? And if I switch this on and off again, maybe let's darken it down a little bit. And zoom out. So that's what we've been doing in these few minutes. That's how you clean up very, very minutely with dodging and burning. And you can see all these gradations here. They are flowing much better now. And that's pretty much the goal with cleaning up. A skin. And then obviously you would go in and brighten the image even further. You would go in to different levels of brightness, go through these transition areas, go through like here where the eye is. There you can obviously clean up the eyeshadow a lot. And then you would work on the other cheek and brighten this even further. And then you would go through these transition areas, go through the shadow areas that you could clean up, and then you work your way through all the way. And yeah, if you go through that, you have a sorry for hitting the microphone. You would have a much more clean image, and that's how we do retouching. It's like going in, painting over the image. So that's what I want to say about this image, obviously, and it was submitted by Kate Urban. So let's go to the next image, submitted by Natalia Safronova. So again, there are a few images, a few things that I see immediately. They are pretty much the same as the image before. I mean, before the other one. So there are also these saturation issues. They were obviously in the original, and you have to clean them up when you retouch the image. You have to take the time and fix those, like this area here and this area here. Right? You have these gray lines that go down there along the nose here, where the eyeshadow transitions over, and then it should have some skin color, but it doesn't. Yeah, what else? There's a lot of texture. It's kind of over sharpened. So if you go in here, like this zoom level, it looks, in some areas it looks okay, and in others where there was already a lot of sharpness, then you see sharpening artifacts. Also around the hairs, it becomes like very, if you zoom out, you see these little weird spots popping up because there's too much sharpness. And I can also see some leftovers of the healing and cloning, where the person obviously tried her best. I think it's, yeah, it should be she, to get rid of these crossing lines. But if you look closely, you have these texture. I mean, if I paint over them, you obviously don't see them. So I'm trying to circle them. Like here, there we have some defects where the texture doesn't match properly. But it's really hard. I mean, if you want to practice retouching, healing, and cloning, then do some hair retouching. And then we have this, here was a hair that I still can see some leftovers. Yeah, so they are like tiny bits and pieces here, all over. Obviously for a portrait, that's fine. Nobody's going to bother. But if you were to retouch in terms of doing hair advertisements, then yeah, that wouldn't fly. You would have to clean that up properly and also be a little bit more precise with the hairline here. And then you can't just remove everything on this side, and then on this side where the hair crosses the ear, you just stop removing it once you hit this edge. Yeah, that's something in the commercial field you would have to be cautious about, and to work precisely and not have too many how would I say, leftovers of your retouching. So for example, I can see a line here, and I can see that the hair has been cloned to basically this line here, where the person stopped, because obviously in this area it gets messy, because you just can't take something here and clone it over. At some point it doesn't look right, because you have to cover it basically, or repaint it, and that's where you would go in and paint the hairs. Obviously I'm not taking the right color, but you definitely would start covering up with skin, cover all of this basically, and then you would repaint the areas and make it look like the hair were just growing from there, right? So that's how you actually would try to deal with this, because hair growing in all directions, there's not, I mean, usually you sample from an area, you pick up this area and move it over, but as you can see, is like at some point you get to how there's no hairline you can clone from somewhere, so you have to recraft and repaint it, or take it from another picture. Maybe that could also work. So yeah, you have to be careful with, like, when you stop at a certain point, to that all the hairs are just stopping at the same place. That's very unnatural. And so, but otherwise, I would say, in terms of, except for the skin inconsistencies, that was like pretty decently done. Still a little bit over sharpened, and color inconsistencies would be the next step. I would recommend that a person is like not only learning about the healing and cloning, maybe improve a little bit on the dodging and burning, but then have a look at the skin color and skin color inconsistencies. That would be the next step, how that person could improve. So let's go to the next image. And I mean, it's not necessarily a beauty image. So what I would recommend is, obviously that person might be taking their own images and trying to retouch them. I would recommend going in and getting some better images and trying to not apply a filter all over the face, because I can see it's like shimmering all over the place, like pretty much everywhere. There's like, skin blur, pretty much everything except the eyes, but then the eyes, they are whitened. The eye whites are unnatural in terms of like too white, and it looks like just being brushed over it. That's something I would get rid of. If this was a model shoot, I would get rid of the braces. If this was a personal client, I would not apply filter that heavily. And so I would recommend that person starting with better images to practice retouching and staying more on the natural side and trying not to smooth the skin too much. That's not helpful. And it's pretty much all advice I can give at this point to this image. And yeah, let's look at the next image. Again, one of the images that works relatively well with a more magenta and more desaturated tone. So let's have a closer look. But yeah, zooming out, I mean, that looks fine. If we are that far zoomed out, the image looks relatively nice. And I think for Instagram use, that technique the person was using would be fine. But if we were to zoom in more, we can see a lot of these. And these are not JPEG artifacts. So these grizzly patterns, they are like from the actual techniques that person has applied, the sharpening basically. So these are, yeah, I mean, it looks like at some areas that had additional noise applied. I'm not sure if that person painted over it and had a noise layer clipped to it. It almost looks like this, how it like some areas that don't have it, others they have it. Yeah, that's pretty much all over the image. There are some spots like here where you already have that noise pattern again, and like here, and then like next to it, you don't have it. So it looks like that person, instead of healing and cloning, has tried to apply some smoothing technique with like super fancy, trying to be fancy and add noise to mimic like texture or something. But it's not working. I mean, you can see it all over, like where the person probably painted all over down here. You all over the place have that noise pattern, and it's the same, and it's not looking like skin texture. Because like considering if we were to look at the chest area, you would have much larger texture compared to when you were to work on the cheek. But this noise that is applied is the same in this area as it is down here, as it is down here. So that doesn't reflect how skin behaves at all. So yeah, that's something definitely I can see. At first I thought it's like over sharpened, but it really looks like a texture layer clipped to another layer that is brushed in. That's all I can think about. And you don't have to do that. You definitely don't have to do that. For example, if we look at the black and white version, you probably see this much more deliberately. So you can see this, yeah, this texture pattern all over. But when you zoom out, that's actually the texture that you should see around this area. And yeah, on top here, there's definitely some blurring going on. So if I darken this a little bit and add some contrast, so for example, if we were to look at, where could we look? Yeah, that's how you would see it. It's like if we zoom out now, let's paint so I can demonstrate you. So we have these areas when you zoom in, everything looks like okay. And then at some point you start seeing these patches that are kind of blurred together. And that is usually a sign of someone using something like frequency separation or inverted high pass. Because usually what would happen is the same as down here. At some point, you would see the natural texture, like down here you can still see it because it was bigger, and up there where it was smaller, you just don't get to see this until you are zoomed out further and you see this bigger blotchy area. That's how you can actually tell that some frequencies are missing. And yeah, and here, yeah, this frequency range was not targeted at all. So on this, I'm not sure what it actually did is like brushing over this area. I don't think that was helpful at all over there. So maybe it was something like, oh, I learned this technique and then just apply it all over the skin and not seeing the downside of it. So you just apply it and think, okay, that's fine. But still, when you're doing some harm to the image, it's not something you should acquire and use as a technique. What I definitely would do is, like, if I was to go over this image, so let's consider this, I would definitely, so that's something I can tell you, I would definitely try to clean up this area where all these hairs come in. You have to clean them up, this bright hair down here, this area, and on this side we have some stray hairs going over here, this bright hairs down there. Fix some gaps down here. You can still leave these hairs, these over the ear, that's fine. You just have to leave these that are going this way and these that are curving in and going over. These you would try to get rid of because they are in the way of how the rest of the hair is falling, right? And then you would fill in this gap here and some down there. Get rid of these bigger marks and lines around the neck. Leave all the moles and the patches. And yeah, that's pretty much what you would do to this image. It was, what you can see, it was captured from a quite some large light source, and then you have this reflector down here. So you have a very broad highlight and then a smooth transition outwards. That's something where you don't have a lot of contrast compared to like other images that have very, very strong contrast, especially around the nose and the cheeks here. You don't have this when you photograph with such a large light source, but yeah, they look, I mean, great, but you still have to fix some issues like these hairs. That's something I would focus on. Oops, sorry. And yeah, that's what I would do to this image, and clean up the lines down here, add some hairs down here, fix some of the endpoints where they miss, and then there are some like these little ones that are leftovers. You just clone them away and make it look a little bit nicer, just like tiny things. Like here you can add some gap, like fill in some gaps down here, and then it looks just much cleaner. And here you would definitely like remove these, so you have a more consistent line from going down there. And then obviously these you would clone away, and here you would fill them in. That's how you would do it. Obviously a little bit nicer, but I can't draw like in this direction. Maybe if I rotate this. So obviously the line goes from down here, then so yeah, you would maybe take these away and definitely add some in here. Make this look a little bit nicer. And the same on the other side. So, because obviously if you are in the beauty industry, that's what people take notice of, is like the eyebrows, how the eyeliner is applied, if you have some, how the lipstick is applied. That's important. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's been 10 images. I don't know how long we've been online. Probably over an hour. I'm not sure. Yeah, it doesn't say how long we've been online. So, yeah, this has been like critiquing 10 images, the retouching. Obviously, we have people from the very far end of being a beginner to some of them that are actually pretty decent and put in some thoughts about like what the color toning was and what colors probably work together. But then what I can recommend and see again and again from mistakes people are making is sometimes healing and cloning has not been done enough, not been done properly. Then many people still don't use the help layers. We have a course basically. I mean, not a course, but you can buy the help layers and they come with instruction video. Obviously, I've been showing the what you can do with it here, but I'm not going step by step. It's like this, what this help layer is doing. This is what this help layer is doing. This is what you can learn from it, and this is how you use it in your workflow. So I'm not here to in detail talk about it, but it's very helpful to analyze the images, but also very helpful to use during dodging and burning and fixing color. And speaking of fixing color, that's something most retouchers don't spend their time on, fixing inconsistencies in skin color or other areas. And this is extremely important in beauty, where the skin has to be looking very fresh and nice, or in fashion where clothing has to be looking properly, and then sometimes they're using very bright colors and they influence other things, other clothing someone is wearing, or you're using a bright pink background that is reflecting light. You have to look for color bounds, color inconsistencies within the skin, within clothing, and learn to fix that. That's super, super important and mostly overlooked. Also, mostly overlooked in many tutorials that I've seen. Obviously, I have not seen all tutorials about retouching. But yeah, so yeah, that has been it. I think, yeah, I have more images that have been submitted. Obviously, if you want to submit your images too, go to our website, boutiqueretouching.com, go to learn in the menu, and then submit image for critique. You can also download free images to practice on. You can use these images to submit again for critique, but also use them to build a retouching portfolio. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I wish you are, wherever you are safe and healthy, because we're still going through that pandemic thing. And yeah, take care. Happy retouching, happy weekend. Spend some time learning something useful. And yeah, I see you in the next critique video, and or whatever I post in the group. Obviously, you can share images in the group. I don't have the time to go in there all the time, but there are other people sometimes giving critique, giving feedback. I have decided to spend my time doing a video so that most people or more people can benefit from me dedicating the time and giving feedback, because I can't do it like on a regular basis. But yeah, I think we will do a few more rounds of these critiques. I don't have a schedule in mind in terms of doing it like every 2 weeks or something. It just really depends on how I find the time to do this. Sometimes last time I had a guest giving feedback as well. So that is nice for not only me giving feedback, but other people who are very knowledgeable. But it really depends on how they have time, how I have time. And yeah, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for submitting images. And again, stay healthy, happy retouching, and I talk to you next time.